This is how to build a terrarium. So a terrarium is going to be a little miniature ecosystem inside of some type of container. So that's the first thing you're gonna need is a container. It can have a lid, or you can make them in a container without a lid. We're also going to be using some rocks for the drainage layer, some charcoal, a screen, your substrate, which is the soil, plants, and assorted little knick-knack paddywhack things to decorate your terrarium. So let's get started and we'll explain what we're doing along the way. We're gonna start with a drainage layer at the bottom, and in this case, we're gonna be using granite chips. You could use pea gravel or whatever you want. This is just a place for excess moisture in the terrarium to drain down to. That way it's not staying up in the substrate and potentially causing root rot. You only need about 1/2 inch to 1 inch inside here. Next, we've got some charcoal, and what this will do is this can actually help absorb any pathogens that are harmful bacteria, such as root rot bacteria, and it will just keep your terrarium more healthy. And it's also highly absorbent of water and porous. You don't need a whole lot of it in here, just enough to somewhat cover that drainage layer. Now next, this part is optional. Some people like using a screen, other people don't, but this is some window screen that we'll put in here, and this will just keep our substrate from mixing with that drainage layer. That'll just go right on top. This one is fiberglass, so it's not going to rust out or rot. Okay, next we have mixed up some substrate, and this is going to be a mixture of peat moss, perlite, vermiculite, some activated carbon, and it also has a little bit of orchid bark in it to make it a little more airy and light. We will need several inches of substrate in here. Now this is a matter of taste, but I prefer to actually have it slope up to one side. You can make it level on the bottom, but we're gonna make a little hill in here. The hill could be in the center, or it could be against one of the sides. Okay, now that our substrate's in there, we can do what's called hardscaping. Hardscaping is going to be incorporating items that are not our plants, such as rocks or sticks, or some people will even put figurines or whatever you want to put in there. So we're gonna mess with this until we get the look that we are desiring. And you'll probably see me put stuff in and take it out and put other stuff in. This is all just trial and error until you see stuff that you like. Don't like that. I'm gonna keep it simple. So I tried some stuff, didn't like it, took it out. Now it's time to add some plants. So let's walk through the different plants that we have. This is Selaginella, and it is a red variety. That'll give us some nice color. I've got a white Fittonia. I may not end up using all of these. This is a heart fern. Peperomia happy beans, and this is Paulownia repens, also known as watermelon begonia or watermelon trailing begonia. It also helps to have these. You can find these online or at a pet store. These are called feeding tongs for feeding reptiles. They also work great for plants. I'm just kind of placing them in there first to see where I like the placement before I actually plant them. This is too big. I think that's just out of proportion for the terrarium, so I don't want to put it in there. I may replace it with something different. All right, let's get to work. Gonna unpot these. Make a little hole. Since this is going to be a closed environment, you can also stick cuttings in here. If you have, Tradescantia cuttings or something like that, they will do really well. And they'll propagate all on their own in a nice, moist environment like a terrarium. Okay, we've got our hardscaping in, we got our plants in, we are almost done here. I don't like to see a ton of soil in a terrarium, and these plants are not filling in just yet, so I'm gonna add in a few more little pieces of wood and plant material. And then we'll also add some moss to just kind of naturalize this whole thing. Moss. Got some dried moss here. You can use live moss, dried moss, or preserved moss. Whatever you can get your hands on. As we spray this down, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind. So one, if you are using a lid, just keep in mind that if it's too foggy all the time and you can't see your plants, you probably need to take the lid off and allow some of that moisture to escape to get it to a more balanced level of moisture. The other thing to remember is you're gonna have some plants die, so don't feel bad if not all of your plants survive. This is a living and changing thing, so you can always add more plants, you can always take plants out if they're not doing well, and you can trim plants if they are growing too big for the terrarium. Also, if you happen to see it sprout mold or fungus inside of here, that is a natural process. And by leaving the lid off a little bit, you can help control the mold growth, or you can just let it cycle through. It'll grow and then it'll finish its life cycle and then it'll go back to looking more clean again. And if you wanted to add something like springtails or isopods that you buy from a pet store into there, you can, and they will help eat the decaying matter and recycle it back into the soil. So here we are, finished product. You can make these as simple or as complex as you want, but this will be a nice little addition to any room, and put them in an area of indirect light or put them under a grow light and they'll be really happy.